everybody. I hope everybody enjoys I have a new name. I'm the legit witch of the legit witches in. That's going to be me now. I have a new intro. As you can see, I was on a football field, and that's pretty cool. But I have a new intro. I have a new name. I have a new time slot. It is now 8:05. So hello, everybody at 8:05. And I changed my little name. Wait, I can do this, right? Right there. So now it is me, it is Sarah G, the legit witch MD, and I'm coming to you live here on Tarot Tuesday. I have two fantastic guests tonight. They are from this area of New England, but now live in other areas in the US. So I feel like their perspective is going to be a little bit different, and we're going to have some great conversation. I have Crystal and I have Ashley. Ashley has been on with me before. Hi, Crystal.
Hi.
And Ashley has been on with me. This is Crystal's first time. But like I said, you guys have been, grew up here, but are now in different places. So I feel like it's a different kind of, environment where we are, right? So, and location wise. And because it's Tarot Tuesday, I am going to pull a tarot card first. And I'm going to use my Tarot Vintage deck.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And we'll see, because it's really funny. It's not funny because it is what it is. We all know that universe has jokes. Usually the card that we pull ends up coming back around through the conversation every time. Ashley knows, Crystal, yes. I'm sure that you've seen and watched, right? So sure. Very funny. We've got the Hanged Man energy tonight. And this deck is just, it's the vintage tarot or tarot vintage. So it's pretty much just an older style of
writing. Yeah.
Right. So let me know. What do you guys think about the Hanged Man?
Hanged Man. I'll let Crystal go.
Yeah. I love when the Hanged Man is around because it just reminds us of our perspective of things. And, we can only know so much. That's part of the fun of being human and having this experience. Yet we all also have a higher perspective if we can just kind of tap into that and slow down a bit. And we can see things a little bit more clearly. So that's what the Hanged Man reminds me of anytime it pops up. So it's what's lurking in the shadows, like myself. I don't know. My office is just so dark, and it's
fun. I love it because you can see just your face, and
it's glowing, and it's
like
glowing.
This ethereal being is coming out.
It's the ring. Awesome. It's the ringlet. Oh, if I do that, it's a little brighter.
Here. Yeah. I got you. Nope, you're perfect. What do you think?
Crystal actually posted something, maybe it was yesterday, on her.
You post some awesome stuff.
She does. And she said, maybe if I get this wrong, I apologize, Crystal, something about your perceptions. Your perceptions and seeing things, you can only see it from here, but sometimes when you can step out of it, big picture, and you can really see it. And I think that's a perfect representation of the Hanged Man.
I agree. I would also like to point out that a lot of people think that the Hanged Man, because we're just going to dive right into it.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that Hanged Man is like this. It's not. If you know the Hanged Man, he's hanging by his Tootsie Toes. So meaning that he can't take a step in any direction. And it's sort of like, when you need a different perspective, how many kids, I remember doing it as a kid, but hanging from the monkey bars and looking at things in a different kind of, your world is upside down. And sometimes you need that to get a little bit in perspective is a great term for this card. You need to take a step back, which is what you had said also, Crystal, to really get a different perspective and a different way of looking at things. And if that is literally that you are hanging in a different position, then that is what you need to do. We cannot move here. When you're hanging off the monkey bars, the only way that you can move is if you move down and bump your noodle, or if you're literally taking that time and saying, okay, I've worn myself out here. I need to get moving and get the right way going. So I feel like that hangman isn't hanging like we're hanging by our Tootsie Toes here. Yeah. So, and that's a technical term. But, if we see that vegetation up there, right, we have growth. We just need to kind of figure out where we are with this. So it makes a lot of sense for what both of you have said. The Hanged Man isn't a bad card. I feel like sometimes we really need that energy to kind of put us into a perspective perspective of we need to look at things just a little bit differently and under a different guise or a different set of glasses or lenses.
Yeah.
And sometimes, just to add in here, we can't see something until our world is tipped upside down. Not in a negative way, but a lot of times, at least personally, I can't really see something until it's flipped. And that's when it's like, okay, I see it.
Yeah, for that I say, like, humans, we're so stubborn. We have so much ego. We've got so much experience and stories, and all of this sometimes clouds our perspective. And like Ashley said, sometimes you need it like in your face, and you need to be turned upside down to be like, hang on, no, that's actually not.
Yeah.
That's not where we're going. That's not what we're doing. And Sarah, when you said like just hanging on, it reminded me a little bit of like hope. And I think that hope is really, the Hanged Man is a hopeful card because there's things that are positive on the horizon that you can't see. And when I think of hope, there's a quote, I don't know who said it, but it's something like, when you get to the end of your rope, you just hang on and just swing with it. And so just circling back to what you both said, right on.
Yeah, and I think that this energy in the collective that we're feeling right now, and I'm sure that you ladies can really attest to this too, because the clientele that I've been, or like the questions that have been coming up within my clientele and with a lot of different people out there, is that we can feel, and the guest that I had last week, we did talk about this a little bit too. You can actually feel the shift. It's palpable. There's a lot of things that are changing and falling apart around us, but not in a way where they were like, ah, it's more of like, oh, that kind of fell apart. Well, that was kind of weird. And we can feel it. It's in, the energy, the collective. It is kind of what the universe is dealing out to us, no pun intended, at this moment in time. It's that we're feeling the shift, that change needs to happen, and maybe changing our perspectives and hanging by our, leg is kind of what we need to realize that we need to do differently within our life. One of the things that I like to say a lot is that we won't change unless we feel uncomfortable, right? And change is always uncomfortable. So there we have it,
For sure.
Yes.
I agree with that. Change it's uncertain. You haven't been there. So any new level, level up or any layer you uncover, it's going to feel different. It's going to feel uncertain. Yeah. And that's okay. That means you're moving. You're making moves.
Yes. That means you're making moves. That means you're doing something, because I always say this too, and it's really funny, but I'm sure you guys will totally get it, is that when we change, whether we lose weight, gain weight, whether our changes in our taste change or anything like that, it always feels weird. Like, oh, I didn't like root beer, but now I really like root beer. Or now I can't button my pants. Or now my pants are falling down. Or, anything like that. It's always uncomfortable to have that realization of that there needs to be some sort of step in front of the other to get to the next destination. So it makes a lot of sense of why we kind of have this. And also what we're going to be talking about tonight, right? Because I did want to kind of look at where you guys are in close proximity, or in location, I should say, not close proximity, but you're both from the New England area. You are steeped in the beliefs and the collective of what we have and the energy up here. It's kind of in our blood. It's who we are. There's nothing that you can do to get away from it, right? That accent pops out every once in a while when you want to park your car. Right, exactly. Or you want Adele's.
Yes.
Right.
Love Dells.
Yes.
So you guys are in different locations, and I kind of wanted to talk about what you are feeling, as an energetic pull where you are, because, you guys can speak to what's up here because we've lived it. We know it in the New England area, especially being in close proximity to Witch Disney World, which is Salem. But how do you guys feel about your locations, and can you talk a little bit about that and about what the collective energy looks like down where you are?
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Krista, or I can?
You go first. I went first last time.
Okay, perfect. I think it's quite unique that we're all on the coast still, and we're all close to ocean. So I think that is very important. Yes. And I always say I can never not live by the ocean. But I think collective, I live in a military town, so it's a little off, I would say, than the rest of the world. It's a hub in itself. But once you even step out of my town, which Crystal has visited, it's very 10 years behind, and it's still 10 years behind. They just haven't caught up with the rest of the world, and it's very hanged man, very stuck in
Okay.
their ways.
Okay.
You're not telling them anything. You know, family traditions are so deep rooted here, and you're not changing anybody's mind. But I did notice year after year, every October, it's almost like it's okay to come visit me. It's okay to put down that guard, which I'm always here, and I'm always open arms. And this year has been probably, it's been nonstop. So I'm seeing that shift, but I would like to see maybe in November if it's still there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Can we
But-
just get out of the October and kind of
I know. Can we just, you know? But I just,
guidance is needed all year.
For
I
sure.
just think people are just stuck down here. I really do. I think that they're just, it reminds me of feet in the mud, and they can't get out because I live in a very swamp-like area.
Well, that's really cool and totally different because, and you know, you guys being from this area understand that the progression when it comes to a spiritual nature is more accepted, and you know, and it's not, you know, across the board accepted, but it is more accepted to kind of be in your own space and understand and go out and forage in the woods and go do, you know, different things and understand your craft a little bit differently here. But to be 10 years behind, you know, a little bit and being stuck in that mud, that's a different perspective entirely.
Yes. I remember when I first came down here, it was 2006. They were still smoking in buildings. They were not recycling. And I remember reading like where it was like a time warp, and it's still like that. Oh, I just got goosebumps.
Wow.
But it takes them a while. It really, I think you can even see it on the political scale. It just takes them a while to get acclimated with the unknown and put down that guard, because for whatever reason, the Bible Belt here, it's like, no, we're not changing. No, we're not believing. We're you know.
They're nice and safe where they are.
Yes.
What you got, Crystal? So you've moved. I'm not going to give up your location.
Yeah.
You've moved from a very landlocked area back to a more closer to the water East Coast environment. So how do you, I feel like you have a lot to kind of speak to when it comes to that. So how do you feel about your location and kind of the energy, the collective that you feel?
I have a lot of feelings about location. So let's see. I do move a lot. I'm from Massachusetts, moved to Florida where I'm currently at, and lived in Arizona for a small amount of time. And I follow astrocartography a lot, which is basically like how the planets align, how you would look at your birth chart. It also relates to like the earth and the earth's vibration and how you like resonate in those areas. So I've been on a journey following a little bit of that, as well as just my own gut. And I still keep coming back to Florida, but listening to both of you, I realize Florida is pretty much like a mix of your energies. Like Ashley is with the Bible Belt. There's tons of religion here, and a lot of it is Christian based. I taught at a Christian school for 5 years, which was I enjoyed my position because I got to speak about belief in a different way. I had a lot of my students, ask me if I was a witch or are you a psychic? And they definitely, picked up on my vibes, and I simply would just bring it back to I'm whatever you think I am. And, just it doesn't really matter what my beliefs are. I'm happy to be here and just learn. And so it was a really good opportunity to allow for them to not know why Miss M is so different than everybody else. But it was very, also at the same time, I had the connection to the metaphysical side where I would do different vendor fairs. We have different drum circles on the beach here. So there is a coastal, witchy, metaphysical type of community here where we do have those, full moon dances and drum circles on the beach, which are great, family oriented, super welcoming. But yeah, so I dabbled in a little bit of that for some time,
Mhm.
and it was just really interesting to see both sides of it. Strong religion here for sure. Not so much judgy about it as much as maybe Ashley might
Mhm.
experience, but definitely not Salem, and that freedom
Right.
of beliefs and any of that.
Right. Right, and I think that it would make sense because where you're located is very transient in nature anyway. There's a lot of people from all different walks of life.
Yep.
There's a lot of people who are have moved from up north down here. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
individuals that are, so I feel like Florida is that kind of that transient nature. Whereas where Ashley is, it's very staunchly this is what it is, and there's no kind of going around it. I hope we didn't lose her. Oh, there you are. Whoop.
Oh, she was here.
She
She's
can
gonna.
pop out and come back in. I'll just make sure she knows that she can come back in. But I mean, it's pretty cool that you've lived a whole bunch of different places and felt. Now, I got to ask you too. Living in Arizona, did you feel that connection that a lot of people talk about when they're in that area? Because it is a totally different connection than it is here. And if it's a connection to spirit, if it's a connection to the universe, it's a connection to the divine, however you
Mm,
want to look at it, there's no right, wrong, indifferent way.
sure.
But I feel like that's also a very bigger sacred space over in that area. You hear a lot of people talk about going to Sedona and
Hmm.
going to Red Rocks and like some of those areas that are mind altering in a sense of like it's a big spiritual pilgrimage to be there. Did you feel that way when you lived there?
Yeah, there's a lot of feelings that I have about Arizona. We got to go to Sedona multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, the Red Rocks specifically, because you brought that up,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of different history. There's a lot of different native energy there than what might be used to up north or even on the coast because it is the desert. And so it
Mm-hmm.
is it's a different tribe, it's a different energy. There's just a lot of moving parts, but not moving water. So everything is
Mm-hmm.
still very much living in the land. And so when I first saw the Red Rocks, I know a lot of people get very excited and it's beautiful, it's majestic, the Grand Canyon, like amazing, how small you feel and how big everything around you feels is it's humbling. And there's just a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of depth to it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it can be somewhat heavy if you're sensitive to energy. If you're going, with the mentality to just depends on what you're going for. To me, I was looking to connect with the earth and oh, I sure did.
Really?
There's a lot of energy there. So
That's so
it was
incredible that you
humbling.
say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think about that in the sense of like, because being that we are very, centralized to the ocean here in New England, and we,
Yep.
I'm not saying that we take it for granted, but we know that we're a drop in the bucket, no pun intended, when it comes to being close to the ocean, because,
Hmm.
you get out there and you're on a ferry, you're on a boat, and you're miles away from the coast and you can't see anything. And you're like, yeah, this is no big deal for a lot of people.
Yep.
Right. And so we don't think about it being that we're just this small little insignificant really at the end of the day compared to what the largesse is of the universe and of the earth and mother Gaia as we know it to be.
Right.
Then when you're over in a place like Red Rocks or Grand Canyon or any of
Mm.
these places where everything and majestic is a word that I love that you said, because I've never been there and I can only imagine the feelings that you feel and being connected to earth in a different way than being here, which we're like, yeah, all right, big deal. But I mean, vice versa for people who have never seen the ocean like we see the ocean. We drive 20 minutes and we're right there. But, I can understand and I really appreciate the fact that you said that, because that's a big draw for a lot of things. And it is a different energy.
Yep.
It's an
Yeah.
entirely different energy.
Made me
So,
super emotional when you asked about it. So I didn't really think of it
oh,
that way. But yeah, water is so cleansing. And so it's
mhm.
easy to get refreshed. But the earth, she just transmutes and she she makes a change, and it's still all part of it. It's the fertilizer for the growth. So like just being landlocked, it's a super transformational. It was a really transformational time. Probably one of the best years, one of the hardest, but certainly amazing. And if anyone can go see the Grand Canyon, it is without words. It is absolutely
Really?
incredible.
That's so cool. I'm so glad that you gave us that perspective and
Yeah.
that different, way of thinking about things because again, we are only one soul. We can only control ourselves and
Mhm.
seeing again that water is very cleansing and us taking that for granted because a lot
Yeah.
of us do and we are very blessed and we are very fortunate to live where we do, but to kind of
Yep.
realize it is humbling, right, to be where you are. So
Yeah.
I think we might have lost Ashley,
She's
which is
gone like a
okay.
freight
She's
train.
gone. She kind of poof, be gone by accident. So that's okay. But let's kind of get into, we did talk about location. We talked about perspective, which is a lot of great things based on the card that we pulled for the day. But also I did want to talk about how did you kind of get into this? I know you were born this way because I totally agree. It's part of my DNA. I grew up like this. It's just something that you could never just kind of tamp down and pretend it didn't exist. So,
Sure.
how did you really embrace what you have and, not necessarily come out of the broom closet because I feel like that's not necessary to kind of speak to you at this moment. It is kind of like, how did you understand that your gifts were so important and that you could provide such a beautiful experience and a beautiful guiding light for some of the people around you?
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. So for me, of course, we have our, when we're kids, we have the sensitivities and we're just more open. So of course I had all of those feelings. I spent a lot of time, again, I've just been a very paradoxal. So as much as I spent a lot of time to myself, if I wasn't completely in solitude, I was surrounded by, my community, I guess, my friends, the ones that we are still connected to, how you and I connected, right? My
Yeah.
girls. So for sure, I've had like this split, and yet no matter what role I was in, whether it was in solitude or with a community, I often found myself at a place to help someone and to offer, mostly with my communication. Communication's hard. It's what makes us human, but it's also the hardest thing for people. And I haven't been the best communicator. So I've spent a lot of time with that. And when I started to spend time on my physical communication, that was really when my intuition started to come in because I was more grounded in the projection of what I wanted to say. That I feel like that's really when spirit was able to anchor in and I was able to start channeling and just saying things. And then people would be like, well, how did you know that? Why would you say that? And I was like, I don't really know, honestly. And that just really started to develop. And I started to learn more about why do I know these things? What is intuition? And so I took some classes under like Doreen Virtue back in the day before she, denounced us all.
Right. And now she's on the other side of the world. Yeah.
She's whatever she's doing there, right? I studied under lots of just different teachers in the intuitive community, some local and some, big names or whatever. And honestly, it didn't all hit until probably, we all have that one moment, maybe that one story or that big chapter. And so for me, it was within my relationship with my husband. And we went through a really transitional period. And for us, there was so much that I was able to see and understand, and that helped me hold on hope, like the hangman, see a higher perspective. And I feel like if it wasn't for that guidance, and it was because of that guidance that we were able to transition to a place. And now both of us use the skills and the tools that spirit taught us during that time, as well as all of the tarot and astrology that I picked up just along the way. And with him, he is more on the Reiki and the energy side of things. And so we now come together just to help mostly couples because that's our experience. I feel like spirit uses our experience. So a lot has to do with love and talking through hard things, communicating through hard things. Some people might find, especially being up in Salem, there is a lot with the, you've got so much energy and so much empathy that there's a lot of the energetic teachings that need to happen in the grounding. So I feel like their spirit uses your story and your position of where you are to boost up whatever gifts you need. So for me, claircognizant, I'm a talker, I'm a channeler. Sometimes I can't stop myself. So then I got to fix my other practices, make sure I'm connected to my breath. I'm yoga certified, so just learning all these little different parts helps me be better at whatever gift spirit wants to drop in my lap,
Mm-hmm. I love that you said in the beginning that, you kind of figured out how to communicate with yourself a little bit. And I feel like that has a lot to do with not only the hangman energy too, but also it has a lot to do with trusting ourselves, which, goes hand in hand with the idea of hope. When we realize that we can do something for ourselves and we control our own destiny in a certain way, and it's like choose your own adventure, so to speak, that then things really start to kind of flop around and kind of lay in place, and you understand that there is a path that you can follow, and it's not going to be perfect, and there might be some ruts, and there might be some dips, and there might be some peaks, and there might be a lot of different things that you will go through. But when you are honest and truthful and communicate with yourself to understand where your standpoint is, it is kind of inherently where we are going to understand, and those messages are going to come through clearly. Would you say that is more of a shadow work side of it? Because I think that it's not
as I sit in the shadow.
Right, exactly. And I'm,
I
lit
love
up like a Christmas tree.
the duality.
Right. It's really funny. But I feel like, yes, going through this idea of shadow work, that it doesn't have to look really yucky and gross and traumatic. And, if it is that you just listen to yourself, you communicate with yourself, you talk to yourself in ways that you can understand it, not only are you going to be a better person for your own self and your own person, but also for your partner and your friends and your relatives, and having that idea of speaking your truth, which is, that cliche term that people talk about, but it's so necessary, because when we do sit with ourselves, and you had said that, and I love that phrase, and just listen and understand, then you have that truth and you can speak it for yourself and say, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. And that true way of communication, especially when it comes to a partner. I love that you work with your husband. I think that that's incredible. I've met him. He's a lovely soul. And I love that you work together in tandem with him. I don't, for my own personal reasons, don't feel comfortable giving couples readings, because I feel like that's not the place that I'm coming from. But where you are coming from with your husband by your side, you're coming from a place of honesty, that your communication and your sense of self and your partnership can really speak volumes to somebody else who's looking for, where's the right direction for me to kind of put that next step into. I love that. I think that's so incredible. And that's not something that a solitary reader may feel as comfortable with. But I love the fact that you do that with your husband. And if that's any sort of communication or a testament to thereof, of your idea that you can, transcend that with your partner, is incredible. That's a different perspective.
Yeah. So when you mentioned, there was a couple things that I thought were really good. You talked about shadow work and how it doesn't have to be this big major thing. And it is on some level, it really is, but it doesn't have to be. And if we're making it that, is that even really our shadow? That's still kind of just us choosing to play in a sand pit, right? It's not really doing work. And that it comes up organically. And the more you are trying to just be your authentic, genuine self, speaking, like you said, there are areas that you wouldn't feel comfortable reading. I'm sure a lot of the areas that I wouldn't feel comfortable reading are part of your forte, right? But spirit uses our truth and our tools to connect with the people who we need. And we're all needed, all of us, whether we call ourselves whatever we call ourselves, it doesn't matter. Our connections are most important. But yeah, so the truth is important, and that shadow work for sure. And with working with my husband and doing readings, it does teach us a lot about our communication, and we just it holds us accountable. I think that's another really important part
Mhm.
of spirituality. No matter what your practices are, you got to hold yourself accountable
Yes.
to align with what you say you are.
Mhm. And with that, I feel like it's important to also say that holding yourself accountable and changing is
Mhm.
also part of that. So you
Sure.
can say that this is what I do, and
Mhm.
and 10 years from now I might change what I'm doing, and that's perfectly fine. Just holding yourself to your authentic self and trusting that voice that's saying, hey, for me, example, I always say I'm a one trick pony. I'm not, but that's what I say, as a joke. If it is that tarot cards are where I feel the most comfortable, and I feel that that is my voice, that is my grandest tool, that is exactly what I'm trying to kind of use to convey those messages.
Mhm.
Maybe who knows, years from now, I might decide that I would rather go into light work in different ways, or
Mm.
light language, or
Yep.
Reiki, or what have you, just to better myself. And it's not good, bad, indifferent. Again, it is just another facet and change of who that you are, and embracing that that's holding yourself accountable.
That's right. Doesn't mean
Mhm.
you can't change, doesn't mean that you're not changeable. It just means that you're accountable for your authentic self. And
Yep.
myself in this moment, for a long time, I was vegan, right? I've done all of these things. I was vegan
Mhm.
for a while, had all these beautiful labels. And then I was like eating meat again. So now the vegan people are like, I thought you were vegan. I'm like, oh, well, I was. And then my body felt like it, needed some meat. So I just had
Mhm.
some meat. So, I think you just make a good point that the accountability, it's not that you don't change, it's that you're committed to your change, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you have to move every and to all these different places to find yourself. Or I had a client today, like she just talked about herself, and she said, well, I'm switching jobs like a 16-year-old. And I'm like, what does that even mean? No, you're not, because you're being accountable for what your happiness is. You're not going to waste time in a job that doesn't feel
Mhm.
right for you. And every step of the way, you're getting closer to where you're meant to be. So that's all it's about. So,
Mhm. I
no.
agree. I think that that's a great point, because a lot of people feel that they need to stay in their lane, and their lane looks like this, when
Mm,
really your lane can look like this, in all these different directions and all these different feelings and
yeah,
facets in just different ways. And that staying in your lane is holding yourself accountable. It doesn't mean that you can't bend and break and you can't fall and then pick yourself back up again. It's
yep,
having the truth to say, like, I fucked up and I need to change myself accordingly, or what have you. And
yep.
that idea of shadow work, I kind of want to go back to that, because a lot of people think that shadow work, especially within our community, right? And I'm not going to lump everybody in the same situation, but it has a negative connotation. If we go through shadow work, it's supposed to feel uncomfortable, and sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And what you had said makes so much sense. On some level it is change, and on some level it looks different, and on some
Mhm,
level it's always going to be this adverse feeling than what we're used to. But
yep,
it's necessary that we look at it in this kind of fortitude and realize that we're composed of so many different moving pieces and different elements, that it's okay that we are changing our approach, and that that's kind of the shadow work that we're going through. And people shouldn't judge other folks, especially in our community, and in whatever it is, the label that you call yourself. I prefer to call myself a witch, but other witches shouldn't say, like, just because I didn't hit rock bottom, what they think I should hit rock bottom, means that I didn't change effectively, or I didn't go through shadow work. It's very personal and individual and different on every level.
yeah. I like when he talked about that, because I thought about the term witch for a long time, and I've taught one of my classes was Witchery Within. I've changed that, I've put it to rest, but I laughed for some time, because it is true, like how you identify and label in many ways. Of course, what our practices are and our crafts is witchery, right?
Hmm.
And it's our practices that create something that works for us, that might
Hmm.
not be a tool that anyone else can use. But I do remember for some time I would say, well, I'm not witchy enough for the witches, and I'm surely not pure enough for the Puritans. I don't know who I am, but I know that my people, we just connect and it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy to just call myself intuitive these days.
Right. Yeah. And that makes sense too. And it's all good. It's all good in the hood. It does not matter where you are, what you call yourself. The reason why I say witch is because it's a lifestyle, right? So whether you're intuitive, you're sensitive, you're a medium, you're a psychic, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're using for your craft and whatever you're using for your spirituality, your platform, whatever it looks like is totally fine. But the idea of a lifestyle is what that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So having this idea of helping others, that's a lifestyle. People can choose to do that, or people can choose to say, I don't give a shit and I don't care what anybody does. And that's the choice. But it's our lifestyle to do better and to choose highest and best for everybody around us, including ourselves. And I feel like that's kind of the momentum of what this lifestyle or witchery looks like, right? It doesn't, you can call it whatever you want to call it, because not everybody will look at me in this area and say, like, witches don't look like you. Yes, they do. They look like whoever you want them to look like. It doesn't.
What does a witch look like?
What does an intuitive look like? You'd never know. And it's really funny because, I'll tell this little story. So my daughter had, I'm not sure if I told it last week, but it's very prevalent for this information.
I didn't hear it if you did.
Okay. So my daughter had a open house, and the teacher wanted to do an icebreaker game, and it's only the parents in the class. There were no children. So the teacher wanted to do some sort of icebreaker that she does with her students so that the parents could understand what the students were talking about for this game.
Another Hanged Man moment, getting
exactly
perspective. Love it.
Right. So the teacher was she flipped a coin, right? So all of those children or parents in our position thought it was going to be heads, would put their hands on their head. And if it was tails, they put their hands on their waist. They didn't put their hands on their butt, but why? We're in a public school environment. So the teacher flipped the coin. I go heads. Okay, great. The next one, I got that right. The next one I got. So I was the last parent standing. So now I'm thinking, none of the other parents know what I do.
Yeah.
And, I just trusted my intuition. I didn't tap into the coin. I didn't tap into the teacher's energy. I was
you were just present in the moment.
Yes, I was cognizant of my environment. So I kind of put it on. And right, so I won the prize, which was a pen. Fantastic. Could always use another pen. So I go home and I tell my daughter, who also has abilities because it does run in the family. I go and tell my daughter that I'm the one who won the heads tails game and I won the pen. And she said, figures, my mom's psychic. Of course she did.
No, so
but nobody in the class knew that. So what does a witch look like? What does a psychic look like? I don't know.
I love that. Our children are so wise, wise when they speak.
They sure are. And what they take into accountability when it comes to what we do in our lifestyle, I feel like it's kind of, and you had said being in the moment and being present. I feel like we're changing a lot of the cycles that we, growing up in the 80s and 90s, and kind of we're changing a lot of the cycles and showing kids that it's okay to emote and it's okay to do certain things and it's okay to not share sometimes and it's okay to protect your boundaries and it's okay to have this lifestyle of caring for people, but also caring for yourself utmost. Yeah. And changing your perspective a little bit. We don't want to hurt anybody, but if you think that person is hurting your energy, it's okay to take a step back and say, no, thank you.
Protect yourself. Yeah.
Yep. And
bring
that's
it back
something
to the empowerment.
Right. And that's something that we were never really taught in a certain way, right? It was, give Auntie so-and-so a kiss. And you're like, I don't want to kiss her. She's got coffee breath. Ugh. Or whatever,
Right.
But now it's like, nope. That's my space and that's my boundary and I'm okay with that. And I feel like changing those cycles of, that mindset is also quite important for what we're trying to accomplish here on this plane in this presence. So I know that you do that. I know, your children are very well versed in what's going on in the world. And, I've seen it in action. They're wonderful little humans. And
No.
what you're doing is you're doing the best that you possibly can. And it's very prevalent. So,
Yeah, our kiddos got along really good. And I think too, also, I think that's why I love teaching for as long as I did, even if the atmosphere wasn't most comfortable. There was my shadow work, right? It wasn't the most comfortable, but I could see a higher perspective that like our youth needs to hear differently what faith looks like, what beliefs look like, what no beliefs look like, and how we can all be tolerant of each other. I remember my very first week at this school, I did have one of the my coworkers, I had like a tolerance sticker or something, and it had all the different symbols of faith. And she said to me, "Oh, you're one of those tolerance type of people, aren't you?" I don't even know if she might have called me a Christian or whatever she called me, but you're one of those tolerance kind of people, aren't you? And I said, "Is there something wrong with tolerance?" And I just like asked her the question back, and she couldn't answer that. So I just thought it was interesting. Like, I'm not sure what is wrong about just accepting you can have your belief. And one of my very best friends is atheist and has, we have lots of conversations about our belief systems and how different they are, because I feel like I believe in everything. And she's like, "No, I don't, but that's cute, honey. That's nice." And I'm like, "But can you say it doesn't happen? Can you say it doesn't exist?" And she's like, "No." And that's enough for me. Like, it's just black or white for her. But she's one of my best friends, and I couldn't change her I wouldn't want to change her. We have some of the most deepest conversations because we can just know who we are and just show up and just be genuine. And I think that's really what is magical about witches, is I do think that if you're practicing this with yourself and you're making it a personal practice and you're cognizant of being that way with others, that energy does become magic for all of us. And that is how we do this together. So
I agree 150% with that. And it's really interesting that you would bring up having a friend who has a different perspective. I've worked in many different places where the language barrier has changed, and still having, and I mean, what you believe in is also how you communicate sometimes, and having the most accepting people, even though that English wasn't their first language, and I would try my best to understand. And I was always welcomed with open arms because I want to learn. I'm not going to change them, and I'm not going to tell them that they need to speak English. But what I am going to do is I'm going to accept them.
How can we come together?
Yes. And tolerance is the greatest word that you could think of. And what we are trying to teach our kids, and just people in general, is how to be more tolerant. It doesn't matter if you are working through something, just giving somebody the space to do that and to be tolerant of what's happening for them, no matter of location and no matter of walk of life. It doesn't matter. And knowing when you need to cut yourself off and say, I've had a day, I need to go back to bed, or I need to, indulge in some ice cream because today wasn't the best day. Like, that's holding ourselves accountable and having that communication open for ourselves as well. But I really think that this approach of understanding yourself without a label is really, because a lot of people are so focused on being a witch or being a this or being a that, right? We can believe in all of it or none of it or some of it or half of it today and maybe some tomorrow. And it doesn't matter, because that's what our uniqueness is all about and who that we are. And it doesn't change our gifts any either. It just the perspective or the way that we kind of deliver these messages that we may need to.
Right. And it was earlier when you said, and we were talking about accountability, like, it doesn't mean that just because I might feel this label identifies with a good part of me, there's so many different parts of us, and there's a label for all of those parts. And it really just matters that you're just true to yourself and you're holding yourself accountable, and whatever those practices are, let them be. When I'm on the beach at a drum circle or in a session dealing my cards, I'm not anything else other than what I'm the part of me that I love to be of service in that moment.
Mhm.
So if that's a witch, great. If it's a psychic, fine. If it's your best friend, I'm happy to be here, whatever, you know?
Right, right. And I love that. And also understanding that there are boundaries too, and when you need to take your time. Because I feel like
Oh, yes.
sometimes we
Sure.
need to kind of retract a little bit and be like, okay, I'm no good, which is, kind of harkens back to what I just said. It goes hand in hand with our practices as well, not only with our own emotional kind of sentiment, but also who we are as delivering these messages and being readers and being people of in a guiding way to others. Sometimes I need to change my client because I've had a crap day and I'm like,
Mhm.
I can see you next week. It's no problem. Or tomorrow morning. I'm so sorry. Plus, having
Sure.
kids, we get monkey wrenches thrown into the mix all the
Absolutely.
time. So,
Mhm.
we are human beings and I'm only as good as what I can provide at that moment in time. So just to kind of go back to talking about what are some of the tools that you like to use? And I know that they change, but what are some of the things that you really resonate with at this moment in time?
So like when I'm in a session or for my self-care?
Whatever you want to talk about, whatever is comfortable for you to talk about in this moment. I use tarot, that's my favorite, but there are other ways that I do channel. I use table tipping. I can effectively just tap into somebody's loved one that has passed, because usually they're literally tapping on me. So automatic writing, some of the other things that I like to do,
Mm,
including that. So I feel like tarot's my main guy, if that's what you want to say, but there are other ways
mhm.
that I really kind of can effectively deliver messages to the people who are looking for some guidance. What do
Yeah.
you like to do?
Yeah, so I also use tarot. I use astrology too. I
Mhm,
can look into the synastry for couples, since a lot of our clients are like couple based. Of course, I don't like study Reiki, but Scott and I do a lot of energy work. So
mhm,
with energy, like a lot of the chakra, just I guess would be like a spiritual surgeon is sometimes the term that's
mhm.
used, just being able to tap into different blockages in the energy and how to just clear that debris. And then I really do like some past life channeling.
Love
So
that.
that's a fun one too, sometimes to just really pull in some of those different lifetimes. But all of it, like you said, all of those gifts that can be used, you need the self-care or else it gets a little fuzzy. And there's
Mhm.
a fine line between I didn't take care of myself enough. So now I just want to give this quick answer, or maybe I didn't deliver it in a way that was the highest for our communication, So
Mhm.
it is important to make sure that there is self-care happening. And so all of those things that I would do for another to help them heal, I have to work on myself. So sometimes I do read my own cards. And when readers say they have a hard time, I completely get that. And I still encourage readers, practice more on yourself then. That just means you need
Right.
some more time with you, right? And strengthening
Mhm,
your self trust. So
mhm.
everything that I would encourage and do for another to help them are the tools that I use for myself.
You're amazing, because I'll tell you, I don't like to read myself because I can't step out of that analytical side. And
Mhm.
that's why in our community, we have trusted people that I will go to and be like, hey, can you
For
just
sure.
throw a couple things for me? Right. But it is also what I talk about in my classes when I do teach tarot is that where do we start? We start the hardest place. So read for yourself and read for people you know. That's where
Yep.
you start, because that's hard. That's difficult to get
Because
into
there's
that.
so many layers that you have to
There's so many
uncover.
things. Yes.
Mhm.
So I think that that's amazing that you do that. I will take the easy road and say, I will just call up a buddy. I'll phone a psychic friend from the network and say,
But
hey,
that goes right back to location where you have that, and I have a lot of Christians around me.
they'll pray
They're
for
not
you.
reading my cards. It's my husband and I going back and forth reading, or honestly, Ashley and I will connect and we read for each other. She's usually I call her like a connection, like that would be a sacred gardener, right? It's someone that you can go to that will tend to the wholesome part and do their best to
Mhm.
pull back any ego that they might have, and like really just try to connect with you genuinely, even though we've known each other since we were kids and things like that. I think having those people are really important, but I don't have that here in Florida.
I love that you said that, because today I posted something about protecting your energy. And with that was a little blurb about, even when you feel that people are saying to you that they are going to support you indefinitely, sometimes it doesn't happen. And with that, you have to realize that you need to take some of your energy back and realize that you had overspent some of it at the cost of something else. So I love that you said that Ashley is one of your psychic gardeners, or
Yeah.
your, I feel like a lot of people would say like, oh, soul sister, soul connection. Yeah. But having somebody literally be like a gardener and tend to what you have going on within your life and
Yep.
putting ego aside is huge. And even though the area location wise, we are steeped with a lot of readers, a lot of sensitives, a lot of psychics, ego is big up here.
Sure.
People will headbutt a bitch or a
right?
witch.
That's the balance of it, though. If it's going to be so deeply rooted in intuition and empathy and energy, then that means the opposite of it is also present. It has to be. That's the shadow work and the balance of it. So
Right, exactly. But it's great. And I have found people with like that in my own world, that I know that if I have something going on, they'll literally check me before I get wrecked, kind of a thing. And they will help me look at the situation a little bit differently, i.e., back to that hanged man card,
Absolutely.
And Ashley is that person for you. I'm so sorry that she wasn't able to come back to us, but maybe we'll have to do this again, because I feel like we do have a very similar perspective when it comes to just enough that it would be different to hear everybody's personalities in different ways. I love the conversation that we've had about what's been going on. Speaking of what's been going on, is there anything that you are going through right now that you want to promote? Any energetic stuff or any astrological stuff that you want to talk about, or anything like that? I know we talked a little bit about the shift that everybody's been feeling, but is there anything
it is a shift. Yeah. I mean, I think astrologically, right, we know that, well, today is like 1010, and we were even just joking a little bit about the 1010 portal, but it really is significant. Just like the number 10 really is about completions and closure and like coming together and things just wrapping it up. So in many areas where, like you said at the beginning, we're realizing where we can't be playing in these different relationships or experiences anymore. It's not genuine and authentic to us. It's time to move forward. And also what happened today, and Ashley she would be jamming all over this, because astrology is definitely her like forte.
Yep.
I'm like her little sister when it comes to astrology. But Pluto went direct, and it's been in retrograde for maybe 6 months, I think is like the time frame. And so with that being direct, like it really is like that boomerang forward. There are a lot of things that are just being freed right now and liberating us.
Yep.
So
I just got the word unraveling, which makes a lot of sense for Pluto being direct, because now it's like we're shooting that situation forward, and we're literally unraveling knots and taking things apart that we had so safely put together.
Yeah.
So that makes sense of that.
And even from like that momentum forward, when you started saying what you saw, and I kind of saw what I saw from that, like when it's unraveling, it's almost because the speed, like a yarn, like if you throw a ball of yarn, it unravels because the ball is like taking off with such emotion, right? And energy. So that's why it unravels. And so, yeah, we're taking off. We're making moves.
Yeah. And now I am not so astrologically comfortable, I guess is the word. I know my big three. I live by my big three. I totally get all of that.
Yep.
So what is Pluto in like, what is Pluto the planet of, or how should we talk about Pluto?
Yeah, it's your favorite planet. It's the planet of shadow work. It's the planet of like endings and transformation and death and rebirth. You think of it, the way I think of it is it's, one of the last outer planets. So it's the deepest and farthest things that we try to just continue to push out of our reality that we don't want to face right here in front of us. And with it being retrograde, it's like there's been a lot of uncovering. So there's
Yes.
been a lot of just sitting in it. So that dark night of the soul energy where you're just sitting in this shadow work, it's finally lifting, so
Right.
we've got some opportunity.
It makes so much sense. If you think about it, it's like
It's
all the stuff
wild.
that the shift there, yes, not only the card that we pulled tonight, but the shift is really making sense for that too. It's
Yep.
something that is palpable, and it can be very cold, which Pluto is a very cold planet because it is
Right.
the farthest away from the sun. And if we think about it, sometimes we have to be super cold about our change. We can't be the loving. We have to put those boundaries up. We have to say
Mhm.
no. And sometimes that means that we have to get a little chilly when it comes
Mhm.
to what we're doing for ourselves. So again, that shadow work, right? We're far away from the sun. We're
Yeah.
not in it anymore. We need to kind of percolate in our own way and change our perspective so that we can be the better version of ourselves going forward. I love this. I think that it's so mind altering just to talk about all of this great stuff with you. I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you have going on? I know I said that I would put your website at the banner, and unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to do that. So, and our producer tonight is a stand-in, and she's done a wonderful job. But
Yay. Perfect.
so we couldn't do that, but I will post your website because I do have all of your information, and that is the best way to get in touch with you. It is doitdivine.com.
doitdivine.com. Yep, that's where, my husband and I just offer all of our things in one place, and that's the easiest way to reach me. Or of course I'm on Facebook.
Yes.
You mentioned it earlier. It's just crystal clear, and it's just my way of not posting personal things, putting my own ego aside, and just getting to what I feel collectively is just a point that needs to be made. And sometimes that does come from my personal experiences. But yeah, crystal clear. It's just a feel good kind of page, my daily contribution to social media.
I can't tell you, it's like every single thing that you post, and I am 100% being honest with everybody when I say this, follow her, because every day she's like knocking it out of the park. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I'm like, this is incredible. And I probably have stolen a couple of things. I'm not going to lie.
Sharing is caring.
Right. It resonates. It makes sense. It's making sense for this moment. It's making sense for the collective. It's making sense for so many different things. What you are putting out there, even though it's not personal, is hitting people where it's supposed to hit. So I'm glad that we talked about that as well. And that is your contribution. I love that. Also finding you online, doitdivine.com. I will link that so that everybody can see. Crystal, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, even though we were supposed to do this with Ashley.
I know.
You kind of got bamboozled in a way, but not really bamboozled. Like it all worked out for the better with this,
Yeah, I know. I had to talk more.
Yeah, but you were supposed to have been on a while ago, and then you introduced me to Ashley because you couldn't make it, and now it just so happened, like I said in the beginning, and we know this, universe got jokes all the time. So full circle. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Crystal, for being on. I appreciate, and yes, of course. And happy Tarot Tuesday. If that Hangman card resonates, let us know. I will see you next Tuesday. That's awful to say, but definitely true. 8:05. 8:05. New name, new intro, and new time. Crystal, you're going to be on again. We're going to do it. Maybe the three of us. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful night.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.